The heavy crystal doors of the Grand Horizon Resort swung shut, cutting off the humid summer air and replacing it with the chilling hum of industrial climate control. But the real frost was radiating directly from behind the Italian marble reception desk. Marcus Vance stood perfectly still, his eyes tracking the subtle twitch in the receptionist's posture, a clear sign that his presence had instantly disrupted her carefully curated atmosphere of high society luxury. He did not look like a mistake, nor did he carry himself like someone who had lost his way. But the way her gaze dropped to his casual linen shirt and dark skin told him everything he needed to know before a single word passed between them. She was already calculating the quickest way to remove him from the premises, her fingers hovering inches above the hidden security console beneath the polished mahogany counter. Marcus simply adjusted the strap of his understated leather duffel bag, stepped forward with an unhurried, measured stride, and waited for the predictable script to unfold. "Good afternoon. I am checking in under the name Arthur Pendleton," he said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that carried a natural authority, though he purposely kept his tone conversational and neutral. The receptionist, whose gold name tag read Evelyn, did not look at her terminal screen. Instead, her eyes locked onto his face with a cold, practiced skepticism that she masked with an incredibly thin, artificial smile. "I am terribly sorry, sir, but our check-ins are strictly reserved for registered guests of the Horizon Elite tier, and I am certain we have no vacancies for walk-ins today." Her voice was sharp, loud enough to draw the attention of a couple sitting in the nearby lounge area, their hushed conversation dying out instantly as they turned to watch the developing friction. Marcus did not flinch, nor did he allow his posture to shift even a fraction of an inch as he looked directly into her eyes. "I am not a walk-in. Evelyn. I placed a guaranteed reservation for the penthouse suite 3 weeks ago under that exact name. So perhaps you should actually type those letters into your system before telling me what is possible." The tension in the air thickened instantly, the silence stretching out between them like a taut wire, as Evelyn's smile vanished, entirely replaced by a rigid defensive sneer that signaled she was no longer hiding her hostility. She clicked her mouse twice with unnecessary force, her eyes scanning the monitor for a brief second, before she looked back up, her arms crossing over her chest. "There is indeed a reservation under Arthur Pendleton, but that reservation was made through a private wealth management firm, and the profile explicitly states the guest is a senior partner from a European investment group, so you must understand why I cannot simply hand over the keys to someone who cannot verify their identity." Marcus leaned one hand lightly on the edge of the mahogany desk, his expression remaining completely unreadable. "Then check the identification, because I assure you the room is paid for, the guest is expected, and your assumptions are currently creating a very expensive problem for this establishment." Evelyn's face flushed a deep crimson, her patience completely evaporating as she realized this man was not going to be intimidated by her dismissive attitude or her corporate phrasing. "Sir, I do not appreciate your tone, and I certainly do not appreciate you trying to bluff your way into our most exclusive suite using an alias that clearly belongs to someone else, so you need to step away from the desk right now before I am forced to involve our security team." From the corner of his eye, Marcus noticed a young woman sitting on the plush velvet sofa nearby, raising her smartphone, the glowing red indicator on her screen revealing she was actively live-streaming the entire encounter to her followers. He did not try to stop her, nor did he look away from Evelyn, knowing that every second of this interaction was now being recorded for an audience that was growing by the minute. "Go ahead and call them," Marcus said softly, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow felt far more commanding than a shout. Call security. Call the manager. Call whoever you need to, because the clock is ticking and my guest arrives in exactly 15 minutes. Evelyn did not hesitate. Her hand slammed down onto the intercom button, her voice echoing through the quiet lobby with a sharp, panicked urgency. Security to the front desk immediately. We have an uncooperative individual refusing to leave the property. Within seconds, the heavy footsteps of two uniformed guards echoed against the marble floor, their shadows stretching across the lobby as they closed in on Marcus's position. The lead security officer, a stocky man named Thomas with over 2 decades of experience handling rowdy patrons, slowed his pace as he approached the desk, his instincts immediately telling him that something about this setup did not align with the typical trespasser profile. Marcus Vance did not move an inch, remaining completely relaxed with his hands visible on the counter, his calm demeanor presenting a stark contrast to Evelyn's visibly shaking hands and frantic breathing. Thomas stopped a few feet away, keeping his posture professional but firm, as his eyes traveled from Marcus's high-end tailored trousers to the vintage wristwatch peeking out from under his cuff, a timepiece worth more than most people's annual salary. "Evelyn, what exactly seems to be the issue here?" Thomas asked, his voice steady as he tried to de-escalate the situation before it spiraled out of control. "This man is attempting to gain access to our premium penthouse suite under a fraudulent name," Evelyn explained rapidly, her voice rising in pitch as she pointed an accusatory finger at Marcus. "The room was booked under the name Arthur Pendleton by an exclusive corporate client, but he refuses to provide a matching membership card or step away from the desk, and he is actively disrupting our atmosphere." Marcus turned his head slightly to look at Thomas, his expression remaining entirely serene. "Officer, I have given her the name the room was reserved under, which happens to be an alias I frequently use for privacy reasons, and I have offered to show my primary identification to verify that the payment method matches the corporate account on file. But this clerk has spent the last 5 minutes telling me which door I should use based entirely on her first impression of me." Thomas shifted his weight, looking at the computer screen and then back at Marcus, sensing the immense gravity of the man's confidence. "Sir, if you have identification that links you to the corporate account or the booking agency, I need you to show it to me right now so we can verify the reservation and clear up this misunderstanding," Thomas said, extending his hand. Before Marcus could reach into his linen jacket, Evelyn snapped across the counter, her voice dripping with venom. "Do not bother Thomas. He already told me he does not have the Horizon membership card, which is a mandatory requirement for checking into that suite, so he is clearly trespassing and needs to be escorted off the property immediately." Marcus's hand paused inside his jacket pocket for a brief second before he slowly withdrew a sleek matte black card that bore no bank logos, only an embossed silver emblem that caused Thomas's eyes to widen slightly. "I do not carry the entry-level membership cards because my account is managed directly by the corporate office," Marcus said, placing the black card face down on the mahogany surface. Evelyn didn't even glance at it, completely blinded by her own frustration and her determination to prove she was correct. Anyone can buy a fake luxury card online to try and fool hotel staff, but you picked the wrong resort today, sir, because we enforce our security protocols to the letter to protect our actual high-net-worth clients from individuals like you. Meanwhile, the lifestyle blogger on the sofa, Amanda, was whispering rapidly into her phone, her live stream viewer count rapidly climbing from 50 people to over 300, as word began to spread across social media that the exclusive Grand Horizon Resort was actively profiling a guest at the front desk. The comments on her screen were a chaotic blur of outrage and disbelief, with users demanding to see the manager while praising Marcus for his absolute composure in the face of such blatant disrespect. Marcus looked down at his watch, noting that only 12 minutes remained before his international associate was scheduled to walk through those doors. I will give you one final opportunity to look up the account reference number attached to that black card, Evelyn, because if my associate walks into this lobby and sees me being surrounded by security staff, the financial repercussions for this resort will be catastrophic. Evelyn let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed uncomfortably through the cavernous lobby. "Oh, so now you are threatening our business. Thomas, take him outside right now. I am not going to stand here and listen to a trespasser spin fictional stories about international associates and financial catastrophes while he blocks our desk." Thomas didn't move immediately. His eyes locked onto Marcus's unblinking gaze, sensing an invisible authority that made him deeply hesitant to lay a finger on the guest. The heavy hum of the elevator doors opening broke the tense standoff, and Julian Vance, the regional director of operations for the entire resort chain, stepped out onto the marble floor. His brow furrowed as he took in the sight of his head receptionist, gesturing wildly toward a calm black man surrounded by 2 security guards. Julian adjusted his silk tie and walked briskly toward the desk, his polished dress shoes clicking rhythmically against the stone, his presence instantly causing Evelyn to straighten her posture and assume a look of professional victimization. "What is going on here? And why is there a crowd forming in our main lobby?" Julian demanded, his sharp gaze cutting across the room, noting the woman on the sofa who was still holding her phone up to record the entire scene. "Mr. Vance, thank goodness you are here," Evelyn said quickly, her voice instantly shifting into an Oscar-worthy tone of distressed helpfulness. This individual walked in without luggage, demanding the keys to our penthouse suite under the alias Arthur Pendleton, which belongs to a high-ranking European investor. When I asked for his membership credentials to verify the account, he became defensive, refused to comply with our protocols, and started making vague financial threats against the resort, so I had no choice but to call Thomas for backup. Julian turned his attention to Marcus, his eyes doing a quick professional assessment of the man standing before him. He saw no anger, no panic, and no signs of hostility. Instead, Marcus was looking back at him with an expression of quiet, expectant amusement that made Julian's stomach drop slightly. "Sir, I am the regional director," Julian said, keeping his tone measured but authoritative. "We take our guest security very tracking seriously, and while we welcome all legitimate patrons, we cannot allow anyone to access our private suites without verifying their identity and account status." Marcus nodded slowly, his voice remaining perfectly level. "I completely agree with your policy director, which is why I have been trying to get your receptionist to scan the corporate account reference card sitting right there on the counter for the last 10 minutes. Instead of doing her job, she chose to assume that because I arrived in a casual shirt and used a privacy alias, I must be a scammer attempting to sneak into the building through the front door." Julian looked down at the matte black card resting on the mahogany desk, his eyes instantly locking onto the silver-embossed emblem that Evelyn had completely ignored. A cold wave of recognition washed over Julian's face as his mind scrambled to process the meaning of that specific emblem, which was only issued to the top 5 global executives of the parent corporation. Before he could speak, Evelyn chimed in again, entirely unaware of the sudden shift in her manager's demeanor. "It is clearly a counterfeit card, Mr. Vance. He is just using it as a distraction because he knows his story doesn't hold up under scrutiny. So we should just let Thomas escort him out the back entrance before any more guests start filming this nonsense." "Shut up, Evelyn!" Julian snapped his voice suddenly, losing all of its corporate polish as his face went completely pale, his hands visibly beginning to tremble. Evelyn froze her mouth, remaining half open as she looked at her director in utter shock, having never heard him speak with such raw, unscripted panic in all her years of working under his supervision. Thomas, stand down immediately and step away from this gentleman." Julian ordered, his voice cracking slightly as he stepped around the counter, his entire body language shifting from a position of authority to one of absolute submission. Marcus watched the realization dawn on the director's face, his expression unchanging as he picked up his black card and slid it back into his jacket pocket. "You recognize the emblem, then?" Director Marcus asked quietly, his words cutting through the silent lobby like a razor. "Yes, sir, I do," Julian whispered, his forehead breaking out into a cold sweat as he realized the catastrophic scale of the mistake his staff had just committed in full view of a live streaming audience. The silence in the lobby was deafening as Evelyn stared at Julian, her brain completely failing to comprehend why her superior was suddenly acting like a terrified schoolboy in front of a man she had spent the last 15 minutes insulting. "Mr. Vance, I don't understand. What do you mean, stand down?" she stammered, her voice trembling as she looked between Julian and Marcus. "This man doesn't have a membership profile in our standard database. He is using an alias." Julian turned on her, his eyes blazing with a mixture of intense fury and pure terror. "I told you to be quiet, Evelyn. You didn't check the database correctly because if you had bothered to look at the ultra-high-tier corporate registry instead of making blind assumptions based on what someone is wearing, you would have realized exactly who you were speaking to." Marcus crossed his arms, looking at Julian with a cold, analytical gaze that made the director shift uncomfortably from foot to foot. "Let's not put all the blame on her just yet, Julian," Marcus said, his voice smooth and dangerous. "After all, your security team was perfectly willing to back her up without asking a single question about the account details, and you walked out of that elevator ready to give me the exact same speech until you saw the card." Julian swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he desperately tried to find a way to salvage his career. "Sir, I apologize unreservedly for this egregious failure of our hospitality standards. It is completely unacceptable, and I assure you that immediate disciplinary actions will be taken against everyone involved in this incident. Please let me personally escort you up to the penthouse suite right now so we can get you settled before your meeting begins." Marcus checked his watch again. There were exactly 7 minutes left before his associate arrived. "We will get to the suite in due time, Julian, but right now we are going to stand right here in this lobby because my guest, Mr. Kenji Tanaka, is arriving via private transport from the airport, and I want him to see exactly how the leadership of this resort comports themselves when a crisis occurs." At the mention of Kenji Tanaka, Julian's face went from pale to completely translucent, because Tanaka was the billionaire tech investor whose venture capital firm was currently negotiating a massive partnership with their hospitality group, a deal that would secure the future of the entire global brand. If Tanaka witnessed even a hint of discrimination or operational chaos at their flagship property, he would pull his funding within a heartbeat, destroying everything the corporation had built over the last decade. Meanwhile, Amanda's live stream had officially crossed the 1,000 viewer mark, with the comment section going absolutely wild as users realized the man at the desk was actually the top executive of the entire hotel chain. The story was mutating in real time across social media platforms, with local news outlets already picking up the stream and tagging the resort's corporate account in thousands of angry posts. Evelyn felt the room spinning around her as she finally began to connect the dots, her eyes darting to the computer monitor where the corporate registry was now loading a high-security profile under the name Marcus Vance, Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Global Hospitality. The photograph on the screen matched the man standing before her perfectly, down to the piercing dark eyes, and the calm, unshakable posture that she had completely misread as arrogance. "Oh, my God," she whispered, her knees buckling slightly as she gripped the edge of the mahogany desk to keep from falling over entirely. Marcus didn't even look at her. His attention was focused entirely on the main entrance as the headlights of a luxury town car illuminated the glass doors of the resort. The sleek black town car pulled up to the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the bright lights of the resort canopy, and the front lobby doors were opened by a breathless valet as Kenji Tanaka stepped inside, accompanied by two executives carrying polished leather briefcases. Tanaka, an older Japanese gentleman known worldwide for his absolute precision and zero-tolerance policy regarding corporate misconduct, scanned the lobby with a sharp, discerning eye, instantly picking up on the thick layer of tension hovering over the front desk. Marcus broke away from Julian and walked forward to greet his associate, his face finally cracking into a warm, genuine smile as he extended his hand in welcome. "Kenji, my friend, welcome to the Grand Horizon. I trust your flight from Tokyo was smooth and uninterrupted," Marcus said, his voice returning to its natural friendly warmth. Tanaka shook Marcus's hand firmly, bowing slightly out of habit, but his eyes quickly drifted over Marcus's shoulder to look at the sweating regional director and the pale receptionist who looked as though she had just seen a ghost. "The flight was excellent, Marcus, but it appears your welcome here was somewhat more complicated than we anticipated." Tanaka observed his tone quiet, but laced with an undeniable curiosity as he noted the two security guards still standing rigidly nearby. Marcus chuckled softly, a sound that sent a shiver of dread directly down Julian's spine. "You could say that, Kenji. It seems there was a minor dispute regarding my choice of attire and my use of a privacy alias for this booking. The staff here were convinced that a man looking like me couldn't possibly belong in the penthouse suite, so they decided to call a full security detail to help me find the service exit before you arrived." Tanaka's expression hardened instantly, his eyes narrowing as he turned his full attention toward Julian, who looked as though he wanted the marble floor to open up and swallow him whole. "Is this some kind of joke?" Mr. Vance Tanaka asked, his voice dropping into a dangerous, icy tone that signaled his immediate displeasure. "We are about to sign a multi-million-dollar international merger that relies entirely on the ethical standards and inclusive reputation of your brand. Yet I walk into your flagship location and find my business partner being subjected to basic profiling by your frontline employees." Julian stepped forward, his hands raised in a desperate pleading gesture as he tried to defend the property without making the situation worse. "Mr. Tanaka, please, I assure you this is a catastrophic misunderstanding and does not reflect the values of our corporation. The staff were simply following a rigid security protocol regarding high-profile suites, but it was handled with incredibly poor judgment, and we are fixing it immediately." "Fix it," Tanaka replied, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet lobby. "You do not fix a systemic failure of respect by simply calling it poor judgment after you get caught by your own CEO. Marcus, if this is how your managers oversee your properties when they think the public isn't watching, then I must seriously question whether our values align closely enough to proceed with this contract." Evelyn looked down at her hands, tears finally spilling over her eyelids as she realized her single act of prejudice had not only ruined her own life, but had just placed a massive global business empire on the brink of total collapse. The live stream camera continued to capture every single word, transmitting the unfolding corporate disaster to thousands of people across the world who were watching the ultimate corporate reckoning happen in real time. Marcus raised a hand slightly, a quiet gesture that instantly silenced both Julian and the billionaire investor, proving exactly who held the real power in the room despite the casual nature of his clothing. "Kenji, I completely understand your concerns, and you have every right to question our alignment today. But I ask that you judge this corporation not by the failures of a single afternoon, but by how we handle the truth once it is brought to light," Marcus said, his voice steady, carrying an absolute certainty that seemed to steady the entire room. He turned around to face the front desk, looking directly at Evelyn, whose head was bowed as she sobbed silently behind the counter. "Evelyn, step out from behind the desk and bring me the physical guest ledger for the past 12 months, Marcus commanded quietly. She wiped her eyes with a trembling hand, nodded frantically, and quickly emerged from behind the mahogany enclosure carrying a thick black leather binder that contained the resort's internal customer feedback and incident records. She handed it to Marcus, her entire body shaking so violently she could barely maintain her balance as she stood before the leader of the company. "Open it to Section 4. Marcus told her, his eyes never leaving her face as she flipped through the pages with clumsy, panicked fingers until she reached a highlighted spreadsheet. "Read the number of formal guest complaints filed against your specific shift over the last year and a half, Evelyn." She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper as she tried to force the words past her throat. 23 complaints, sir." "And what was the common theme in every single one of those 23 complaints?" Marcus asked, his tone devoid of anger, but packed with an undeniable weight of accountability. She couldn't answer, her head dropping lower as the silence stretched out, confirming her guilt to everyone standing in the lobby. "I will tell you what the theme was," Marcus continued, looking out over his staff. "Every single complaint stated that you were dismissive, suspicious, or downright rude to guests who did not fit your personal definition of wealth or status, guests who arrived after long flights in casual clothes, guests from diverse backgrounds, or guests who simply preferred privacy over luxury performance. For 18 months you have been eroding the very foundation of this brand from behind that desk, costing this specific property over $2 million in projected loyalty revenue because people chose never to return after interacting with you." Julian's jaw dropped as he listened to his CEO read the exact statistics, realizing that Marcus hadn't just stumbled into this situation today by accident. This wasn't a random check-in. It was a carefully planned internal audit designed to catch a toxic element in their system, and they had walked directly into the trap. The live stream viewers were absolutely ecstatic, flooding the chat with messages celebrating Marcus's brilliant strategy and calling him a master of corporate leadership. Amanda, the blogger, was practically breathless as she narrated the reveal to her audience, which had now grown to nearly 3,000 concurrent viewers. Marcus turned back to Tanaka, his expression serious. "Kenji, this is why I booked under an alias today. I knew we had a leak in our hospitality standards at this location, and I needed to experience it firsthand to understand its true depth. Now that we see it clearly, we can eliminate it entirely and build something far stronger in its place." The gravity of the situation settled heavily over the entire room as Marcus Vance took a slow step closer to the reception counter, his presence completely dominating the space as he prepared to deliver his final assessment of the afternoon's events. Evelyn stood before him, her shoulders slumped in total defeat, knowing that there was absolutely no corporate excuse or clever phrasing that could save her position after her own history had been laid bare in front of the global CEO. "Evelyn, your employment with Horizon Global Hospitality is terminated effective immediately," Marcus said. his voice dropping into a firm, non-negotiable register that left no room for appeal or debate. You will leave your keys and your name tag on that desk, and you will be escorted from the property by Thomas, not because you made a single mistake today, but because you have shown a consistent pattern of prejudice that actively destroys the inclusive culture we have spent a decade building across this world. Evelyn didn't say a word. She simply unpinned her gold name tag with trembling fingers, placed it gently on the polished marble counter alongside her office keys, and turned around to walk toward the exit. Her head bowed as Thomas followed her out with a somber, respectful distance. Marcus then turned his sharp, unblinking gaze toward Julian Vance, who felt a cold bead of sweat roll down the back of his neck as he realized his own fate was now being decided by a man who valued absolute integrity over regional seniority. As for you, Julian Marcus continued, crossing his arms over his chest as he looked at the regional director. You have spent the last 3 years managing this territory, yet you were completely oblivious to 23 formal complaints happening right under your nose at your flagship property, and your first instinct when you stepped off that elevator was to back up an exclusionary behavior instead of investigating the facts for yourself. Mr. Vance, please, I admit my oversight was severe, but I have dedicated 15 years of my life to this company. Julian pleaded, his voice cracking under the immense pressure of losing everything he had worked for. That dedication is the only reason you are not leaving this building alongside Evelyn today, Marcus replied coldly. However, your tenure as regional director is over. You are being demoted to a secondary operational role at our Midwest logistics facility, where you will spend the next 12 months undergoing intensive operational and sensitivity retraining. And if you fail to meet our standard benchmarks there, your separation from this company will be made permanent. Julian swallowed his pride, nodding slowly as he realized that a demotion was far better than being completely blacklisted from the luxury hospitality industry altogether. Thank you, sir. I understand and I accept your decision, Julian whispered, stepping back into the shadows of the office alcove to begin packing his personal belongings. Marcus then looked across the lobby toward Amanda, who was still holding her smartphone high, her face filled with absolute awe as she realized she had just captured the most significant corporate transformation of the year live on her channel. Marcus walked over to her with a relaxed, confident step, looking directly into the camera lens with a calm smile that instantly sent the live stream chat into an absolute frenzy of positive reactions. To everyone watching this stream right now, I want to say one thing clearly. Hospitality is not about the clothes you wear, the name on your passport, or the amount of money you have in your bank account. It is about human dignity, Marcus said, his voice carrying through the microphone of Amanda's phone with a crystal-clear authority that resonated with thousands of viewers across the globe. We made a severe error at this resort today, but we own our mistakes. We learn from them, and we use them to build a fairer system for everyone who walks through our doors. So thank you for holding us accountable in real time. Amanda lowered her phone slightly, her eyes wide, as she looked up at the CEO. Mr. Vance, that was the most incredible display of leadership I have ever witnessed in my entire career as a journalist, she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. Marcus nodded politely to her, before turning back to Kenji Tanaka, who had been watching the entire resolution with a deeply thoughtful expression on his face, his arms crossed as he weighed the true character of his prospective business partner. Tanaka stepped forward, his face relaxing into a deep, respectful smile as he extended his hand toward Marcus. once more his initial anger completely evaporating as he recognized the immense value of Marcus's unshakable integrity under pressure. Marcus. In my country, we have a traditional art form called kintsugi, where we repair broken pottery with pure gold, making the final piece far stronger and more beautiful than the original vessel ever was, Tanaka said, his voice echoing warmly through the now quiet lobby. Today I watched you find a fractured piece of your corporate system and repair it with absolute truth and gold standard leadership, which has given me far more confidence in our partnership than any polished boardroom presentation ever could have provided. Marcus shook Tanaka's hand firmly, his smile returning as he felt the immense relief of knowing their global merger was not only saved, but was now built on an unbreakable foundation of mutual respect. Then let us go up to that penthouse suite and finalize this $340 million deal. Kenji, because we have a lot of work to do to change this industry for the better, Marcus said, gesturing toward the executive elevator. The two powerful men walked side by side toward the lifts, their strides confident and synchronized, followed by their assistants, who were already typing out the updated contractual clauses regarding mandatory diversity metrics and inclusive workplace training programs across all 47 global properties. The elevator doors glided shut, leaving the lobby in a state of peaceful, transformative silence as the grandfather clock in the corner chimed 4 times, marking the exact hour that a new era of corporate responsibility had officially begun. Amanda finally ended her live stream, looking down at a screen that showed over 5 million views accumulated in less than an hour, knowing that the story of the Black CEO who booked a room under an alias would continue to inspire people around the world to stand tall, maintain their quiet dignity, and trust that real power never needs to shout to be revealed.